Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm Laura Blackwell, tonight's host. My co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour almost a year ago to help people stay together, stay connected while we're apart. Now that's starting to loosen up a little bit, but we're still finding Story Hour a great way for all of us to come together and share stories, just like we're all around the same campfire. So welcome back to those of you returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Randee and Max D. Stanton. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, please consider a donation to one or both of tonight's featured nonprofits, New York Abortion Access Fund and Philabundance. Randee is reading for New York Abortion Access Fund. The New York Abortion Access Fund supports anyone who is unable to pay fully for an abortion and is living in or traveling to New York State by providing financial assistance and connections to other resources. You can find out more at nyaaf.org. Max D. Stanton is reading for Philabundance. Philabundance is an innovative, impactful, and collaborative organization distributing more than 24 million pounds of food a year to those in need. Philabundance is a proud member of Feeding America, a nationwide network of food banks leading the fight against hunger in the United States. You can learn more at philabundance.org. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It can be really nice for our readers to see people. And chime in on the text chat if you like. If you're joining us on Facebook, thank you, but please understand that we're not seeing your messages in real time. So our first reader tonight is Max D. Stanton. Max D. Stanton is a librarian, educator, and Dungeons and Dragons nerd. Can I call Druid? I call Druid. Excellent. Lives in West Philadelphia with his wonderful girlfriend and two savage, unruly hounds. Oh, doesn't look unruly at all. Looks very mannerly.
Yep. Yeah.
Max used to be a corporate attorney, but he chose a new way of life after an unexpected encounter with the devil. Not the usual scheduled kind.
Not on an appointment.
Terrible. A Season of Loathsome Miracles is his first short story collection. So Max, welcome to Story Hour. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for this for that wonderful introduction.
Well, you know, you did write most of it. I just smarted it off a little bit.
Oh, but lovely reading of it.
You're very kind. Well, we're ready for your lovely reading of the story you brought tonight.
Fantastic. Tonight I'm going to be reading from A Season of Loathsome Miracles, my debut collection, which is available now from Journal Stone Publishing. I'll leave a link to it in the chat for anyone who's interested. And I'm going to be reading my story, Burn the Witch. I step out of my jail cell, blinking as I emerge from the dungeon's gloom into the sunny execution grounds. Church bells peal in celebration of my doom, and the townsfolk are all packed cheek to jowl, cheering and jesting like it's carnival time. Everyone's come out to watch an old crone die screaming. Burn the witch, they chant, burn the witch. The stake and the platform and the kindling are barely 100 paces away. My hands are bound so tight that they're turning purple, and there's another rope wrapped around my neck. The executioner's got hold of that one. He yanks it like he's trying to move a stubborn mule rather than a frail old woman, nearly pulling me off my feet and sending pain shooting through my legs and hips. My knees have ached for years, and a fortnight in chains has only made them stiffer and weaker. My wrists are in even worse shape, and if they weren't going numb, I'd be in agony. The Inquisitor walks beside me, muttering insincere prayers in bad Latin. The Duke himself waits for me ahead by the pyre, eager to pronounce my death sentence as soon as the Inquisitor hands me over to his secular authority. The bastards think they've got me, and I will indeed die today, but before I burn, I'll see all my enemies destroyed. Even though my time in the dungeon hasn't done my rheumy eyes any favors, I can still make out a few familiar faces in the crowd. Up ahead, the cloth merchant, Peter Morgan, and his squalling brood of ugly children have claimed the prime viewing space closest to the pyre. They must have gotten here at the crack of dawn to get that spot, or more likely, Peter bullied some other man out of it. Of all my accusers, he is the one I hate the most. It's not because his testimony was the most damning. Far from it. Even if he'd never spoken a single word against me, they'd still be leading me to the stake now. I hate Peter Morgan with an acid passion because he is the only man who bore false witness against me. Marta Cooper cowers behind her husband and whimpers as I pass by. She told the Inquisitor that she saw me take on the form of a hideous beast she couldn't even name. I don't mind watching her squirm a bit, but I don't bear her any particular grudge. She did, after all, catch a glimpse of me playing with ectoplasm, whirling matter out of nothingness into astonishing new configurations. Bandy-legged Tom averts his eyes when I gaze in his direction, and well might he be sheepish. All the Inquisitor had to do was show Tom the instruments of torture, and Tom blubbered about the midnight feasts and bonfires in the woods, giving up my name as the instigator of it all. Still, there's no need to revenge myself on that cripple. While he should have kept his fool mouth shut, I don't begrudge any man his cowardice. We've all got a right to save our own skins. Peter Morgan, on the other hand, that simpering, self-satisfied gossip and snitch. He stood before the court of the Inquisition in his Sunday finery and gold chains and perjured himself against me for no purpose besides his own amusement. He told them I'd try to buy his soul, as if I'd have any use for that greasy thing. He said that I tried to seduce him with a love philter, a notion that makes me want to vomit. And now there he is, smiling, laughing, pointing me out to his brats like I was an ape on display, puffed up as proud as Satan, but with none of the accomplishments. He'll be the first one I take. I have very little time left before I die, but time is a place where the soul is confined, and I know the prison's layout, its escape routes, the secret passages to other cells. I've read every page of the Necronomicon of Abdul al-Hazred, and I've modeled its diagrams of infinity in knots of twigs and bones. I've forgotten some of the subtleties in my old age, but the fundamentals are all very much with me. I visualize the whirls and loops of temporal space in my mind's eye, and my spirit leaps backwards through time to attack my enemy in the past. The world explodes into a riot of unnameable colors and screeching sounds as I leave my body behind to travel through the inner Chronos. The first time I did this, I was so overwhelmed that I lost my way and wound up millions of years before the Earth was formed. It took me centuries of subjective time to find my way back to my own era and my own flesh. It's miraculous I didn't go mad in the process. I must be very careful not to go off the trail now. To be stranded bodiless in the inner Chronos is a fate far worse than death. I latch on to Peter Morgan's soul in the so-called present day and follow it pastwards, tracking him through time towards his boyhood. I traveled the trail for about 30 years and then re-enter temporal space. Now I have to find a sleeping body for my mind to inhabit, but that's easy enough. I spy a maid dozing in a barn and slip into her like I'm putting on new clothes. I stretch out on the hay bale that my host was napping on and admire my borrowed form. It's such an immense pleasure to be in a young, strong, healthy body again that I spend a few moments simply savoring it, running my hands up and down this supple form. When you have been in constant, aching pain for as long as I have, the absence of it becomes a delicious joy. But I can only indulge for so long. There's another joy I'm after, less delicious, but more satisfying. I still have the scent of Peter Morgan's soul, and I follow it like a hound. It's an odd feeling to be back in my hometown 3 decades past. The past is a country that is foreign and familiar simultaneously. My neighbors all look so much younger. So many men and women that I've seen dead and buried or walking the streets going about their business. I realize that I've forgotten many of their names. My younger self is around somewhere too, but I stay away from any place she might be. Knotting up the fabric of space-time is a risky business, and I'm only after one man. I don't want to tear the whole cosmos apart. I find Peter Morgan fishing down by the stream. While he's just a youth now, I can see the corrupt, lying merchant he'll become. He's by himself, which is perfect for my purposes. And he's right at the age where a pretty girl like the one whose body I've borrowed can talk him into anything at all. He drops his pole and hops to his feet when he sees me approaching. There's a sly smile on his lips, a lustful gleam in his eye. I mirror it back at him, and his grin grows broader. He doesn't suspect a thing. He thinks today's his lucky day. We exchange a few indecent pleasantries, and then I take young Peter by the hand and lead him away to the loneliest place in the woods. It's a place where a man might scream and not be heard. I know the loneliest place in the woods quite well. When I am finished, I return the girl to the place where I found her sleeping. She'll remember all of this as nothing more than a bad dream. It pains me to leave her lovely, youthful body, but I can't stay here indefinitely. I've known folks who, in their moments of final extremity, tried to leave their own failing forms behind and spend eternity in borrowed flesh. That sort of thing never ends well. I leave the past and return to my last hour. I rejoin my body at the very instant that I left it. I see my soul leaving even as I arrive. My captors won't have noticed a thing. I look back to the spot nearest the pyre and see that Peter Morgan is gone. Most of these people won't remember that he ever existed. He's gone from being one of the town's leading men to a boy who vanished many years ago. His children are all gone too, cut out of existence entirely like stray threads clipped off a frayed cloth. One down. The pyre is 50 strides away. The Inquisitor's thin voice drones on from behind my shoulder. He's a dark, skinny, rather seedy-looking Dominican. A Walloon, I think. He arrived in town only a few weeks ago, at the invitation of our beloved Duke. The Duke just couldn't stand for there to be witch hunts and burnings in his neighbors' lands without getting a piece of that fun for himself. Men will become jealous of each other for such strange reasons. The monk doesn't speak much or go on for grand proclamations, but his office and function alone make him a powerful rabble-rouser. The finger-pointing and accusations began even before his arrival, as soon as word spread that he was coming. People brought out the long knives against all the strange folk, the pushy women and the dreamy boys, and everyone else who didn't live up to notions about what they were supposed to be. As a cranky, well-read, never-married woman, I suppose I would have been a target for my neighbor's accusations and the Inquisitor's scrutiny, even if I weren't actually a bride of Satan. It's a good thing that I actually committed many of the crimes they leveled against me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any recourse against these swine now. The monk came for me early in the morning, escorted by 2 of the Duke's soldiers. They did not knock. You should know that the good folk of this town have charged you with the grave crimes of sorcery and witchcraft, he said. When he talked to me, he'd fix his empty gaze over my shoulder. I don't think he looked into my eyes once, in all the time we spent together. It is my privilege and right to determine the truth of it, he said. You must come with me. At that moment, I could have done 1,000 ghastly things to him, and neither his bodyguards, nor his crucifix, nor anything else could have saved him. But I went with him regardless. If I'd have destroyed him then, more would just come following. Like ants, squashing one doesn't do any good. The Inquisitor began by showing me the tools of his trade, apparently hoping that alone would be enough to terrify me into giving in. The fool just didn't know who he was dealing with. I've been to the Citadel of Burning Glass, met the pale angels with razor blade wings who dwell there, and let them escort me to the farthest realms of excruciating agony and blinding pleasure. Thumbscrews and hot iron still hurt, but after what I've experienced, they don't frighten. It's the constant grinding, wearying pains of old age that I dread, not the depredations of the torturer. And so I told that tonsured moron to go ahead and do his worst. His worst wasn't nearly as bad as he thought it was. Whenever it got uncomfortable, I would recall my time at the Citadel, and whatever the monk was up to seemed like a tickle by comparison. My refusals to shriek and plead frustrated him enormously, but I'm too old to pretend that I feel something just to spare a man's feelings. That's a young girl's game. Throughout all of it, the Inquisitor kept asking the same question again and again. He wanted to know if I had seen the devil. He asked if I'd seen the devil after shoving my head in a bucket of icy water and after scorching my flesh with a red-hot poker. He asked if I'd seen the devil after depriving me of sleep for days and after sticking needles beneath my fingernails. My approach then was to damn him as a fool while admitting nothing and denying nothing. This offended him horribly, far worse than any confession of diabolical orgies would have done. But now I shall answer his question. I speak a few of my beloved names beneath my breath as I walk to the stake. Astereth, Belial, Old Nick, I whisper longingly. Lucifer, Beelzebub, Moloch, my darling. He is always present beside me. He is always present beside all of us. But I feel his form solidify, and when I turn my head, he is there, unseen by anyone but me. He stands impossibly tall and erect, a proud, dignified giant, dressed in robes so black that they drink the light. As always, he wears a mask to spare me from the annihilating glory of his countenance. Today it's a goat. His golden eyes glitter with intelligence and playful malice from beneath the holes in the leather. Greetings, my child, he says. No two people hear the same thing when he speaks, but I experience his voice as deep and musical and soothing. Hello, old friend, I whisper. I think I've danced at my last Sabbat. Nonsense. You are dancing still. You will dance forever. I see you on Walpurgisnacht of 40 years ago, hanging a garland of flowers around my neck and kissing me. Even now you are a beautiful girl, flying amidst the nightbirds on your broomstick, naked and shining with grease rendered from the fat of hanged men. The Sabbat never ends. You know what I mean, you flatterer. You see the pyre yonder. I do. What would you have me do about it? When my beloved asks a question, it fires the imagination and brings countless possibilities to mind. The Inquisitor asked me if I had seen the devil. Despite his piety, I think he wants to know what you look like. When the flames kiss the pyre, please grant his wish. My beloved leans in close so I can kiss his forehead one last time. It shall be my pleasure. Then he stares hard at the Inquisitor. The monk sees nothing, not yet anyways, but he shudders and forgets his prayers. You asked me if I saw the devil, I tell the monk. I never did, not once, but you shall. We come now before the Duke. He's seated upon a handsome chair of dark wood, swaddled in fur and velvet, surrounded by his soldiers and his counselors and his family. There's little that I despise more than a highborn lowlife. For years he's been driving this land to ruin by waging wars, imposing larcenous taxes, and pointedly neglecting anything that might pass for civic improvement. When people ask why life here is so hard and dismal, oh, it's all the fault of the witches and the Jews. The Duke starts droning on with the legal formalities of my condemnation. I didn't pay attention during my trial, and I don't pay attention now. Instead, I look past the Duke to his wife and his daughter. Unbeknownst to the Duke, his women have danced with me in the woods on many a moonlit evening. They've often stolen away from their domestic errands to ask my counsel on matters great and small. He doesn't know what they really think of him. As far as I can tell, the brute think that he well-deservedly basks in their quiet, dutiful love. I look to Elisa, the Duke's long-suffering wife. She's staring down at her own feet. Fair enough. She never really wanted my way of life. Then I look to Petra, the Duke's daughter and youngest child. Her eyes are narrow blue daggers. She inherited her father's rage, but it's a dangerous thing to be a woman with a man's temper. The mother being the gentle creature she is, I had to teach the daughter how to deal with her anger, how to rage like a woman. She was a good and eager pupil. When you've known someone for a long time, and I've known Petra since before she was born. It's easy to talk even if you can't say a thing. Petra understands me immediately. I don't think she'd have resorted to patricide if it was only about herself, but we'll do things for our friends that we wouldn't do for ourselves. Without needing to gaze into the future, I know that in the next few weeks she will go out into the woods to prick some pretty, cheerful-looking flowers that I've taught her about. Soon thereafter, her father will come down with a terrible stomachache, and soon after that, her oldest brother will be the new duke. The executioner prods me, and I realize that I'm supposed to say something. I asked you, do you repent? The duke sneers. I spit. If I was closer, I'd have hit him in the eye, but at this range, the best I can do is splatter his boots. The duke trembles in his seat and goes red, and the crowd suddenly goes silent. I doubt the duke's ever been treated with such disrespect before. I'm happy to treat him to a new experience. And it's not like there's anything he can do to retaliate, not at this point. What's he going to do, order me burned alive? Damned hag, he bellows, his precious composure shattering in front of all his subjects. Burn the witch! The silence breaks and the mob cheers lustily the moment the sentence is issued. I glance back in their direction and am nearly overcome by the revulsion that I feel towards these braying, ungrateful illiterates. Over the years, so many of these peasants snuck into my cottage while nobody was looking, begging me for a love charm or a fortune telling or a folk remedy or an abortion. So many of them came out to the midnight celebrations that I arranged, seeking a few moments of illicit pagan joy to brighten the drabness of their lives. They might well be burning beside me if I'd told the Inquisitor their names. But even though they are full of spiteful joy right now, soon enough they'll be weeping, for there will be a season of loathsome miracles to mark my passing. When their babies are born blind and their cows calve two-head carnivorous prodigies and slimy, poisonous creatures fall from the sky instead of rain, they will think of me and shudder. The executioner drags me onto the killing platform. My beloved remains at the Inquisitor's side. What happens next, I must face alone. The executioner, Dortmund is his name. I've known him since he was a pup and his daddy was a local neck stretcher. Is a big, unwashed lout, and he loves his work. Ordinarily, I like a man who's expert in his field, but this time I make an exception. As he's binding me to the stake, I withdraw from my flesh and slip away into the future. Just like I did with the late, unlamented Peter Morgan, I use Dortmund's soul as my point of reference in the chaos of the inner chronos, pursuing the executioner through every hour of his life to come. Traveling into the future is even more difficult and uncertain than going into the past. The road is as fluid as a stormy sea, and wrong turns into a limbo of unrealized possibility or an ever-present danger. But with Dortmund as my unwitting, unwilling guide, I know I'll get where I need to go. I follow him for his whole life. From my death day onwards, he'll always have a vague sense that he is being pursued, a feeling of dread that he cannot place or explain. Good. When I feel his dismal, puny soul starting to crumble, I re-enter temporal space, borrowing the first sleeper that I find. This time it's a little boy, no more than 8 or 9. Fine for my purposes. I sniff the wind for the souls of my enemies and catch 2 familiar scents, one of them very close. I follow it past refuse heaps and dunghills to a gloomy alley where a creature in rags shivers and twitches on urine-damp cobblestones. One of his hands continually traces nonsense patterns in the air. The other smacks against the back of his own head ceaselessly, as if he's trying to knock something out of there. He's aged 100 years and 20, but I'd never mistake this eminence. He's my old friend, the Inquisitor. Hail and well met, I tell him. Do you know who I am? From his fearful howls and his desperate efforts to crawl away through the nearest wall, it's plain that he does. I grab a hold of his matted beard and twist it to get a good look at his face. Staring deep into his eyes, I see hell reflected back at me. The ex-monk whimpers softly and wets himself. You used to be such a cold fish, I tell him. You could put hot irons to an old woman without even flinching, without showing any human feeling at all. You didn't feel anything inside back then, did you? Ugh, he groans. He nods fiercely, but I don't know if the gesture is voluntary. Cold fish, thoughts all slimy. You posed me a question once, Inquisitor. You asked me if I had seen the devil. You were very insistent. Devils, he blathers, levels of devils at their revels forever. Oh God, his face. Is your curiosity satisfied now? He explodes into idiot laughter. I ponder showing some mercy and prying up a cobblestone to knock out his brains. I decide against it. He shouldn't have asked me the question if he couldn't bear the answer. I leave him behind to his slow death of madness and press on to the outskirts of town. Dortmund still dwells in the same mean, desolate hut he inhabited 20 years ago, within spitting distance of the potter's field where so many of his victims lie buried, myself included. The town's faithful executioner spent all those years getting his hands bloody for these people, and they wouldn't even let him live amongst them. There's a lesson in that. A dim light gleams in the window. I peer inside and see the executioner, old and withered and on his deathbed. From the way he's wheezing and coughing, it's plain his lungs are failing. He's alone in his last moments. I think he's been alone all along. There's certainly no sign that any wife or child ever lived here, no hint of cheer, just a few sticks of furniture and a sputtering candle. I'm glad that I let Dortmund live out his full span. Just being himself for so many years was a worse punishment than any of I'd devised. And indeed, for all my secret knowledge and power, if Dortmund hadn't burdened me, I'd eventually have met a similar death to the one he's experiencing now. Which isn't to say I'm letting him go, of course. Not in my nature. I step inside and pick up the candle. He's in such bad shape, it takes him a few moments to realize there's anyone else in the shack. He seems very confused when he finally notices the child hovering over his bedside. Hello? He gasps. Hello, Dortmund, I reply. Do you remember me? You burned me to death years ago. I told you that someday I'd return the favor. I told you I'd bring you a candle to light your path to hell. The executioner's face lights up with horror as he recalls. I make a mental note to tell him about the candle when I get back to the present so he'll remember it in the future. He tries to scream, but all he can produce is a wet, ghostly rattle. I toss the candle onto his bed. Dortmund shrieks and picks it up, but by the time his clumsy old hands have got it, his blanket and the straw mattress are already burning. He tries to stand and run with no luck. This was already his deathbed even before I set it on fire. The best he can do is roll onto the floor and crawl towards the exit, while flames climb the walls and the smell of roasting pork wafts through the air. Just to be sure, I put the latch on the door as I leave. I put my borrowed body back to bed and come back into the present moment where my doomed executioner, now young and vital again, is tying me to the stake. For a moment there in the future, I felt a drop of pity for him, but from the vicious pain he's inflicting with the ropes and the dumb, sadistic grin on his face, I'm glad about his fate. Someday I'll see you burning alive too, I tell him. Someday I'll bring you a candle to light your way to hell. Remember that. He crosses himself and scoffs, but I know to a certainty he'll never forget my curse. Once the knots are tied to Dortmund's satisfaction, he ignites the kindling beneath the platform with a burning brand. Smoke billows up, stinging my eyes and throat, and I feel the heat spreading beneath me. In the crowd, I see my beloved stand before the Inquisitor with his back to me and remove his mask. The monk shrieks horribly and faints dead away. That's the last of it. I cut it awfully close, but now all my debts have been paid. Even now, as tongues of fire are rising up through the planks of the platform and licking at my feet, it's not too late for me to get out of this deal. And honestly, I'm awfully tempted to make my escape. There are plenty of ways I could do it. I could go back into the past again and twist it between my fingers until it becomes a present where I am sitting at home with my tea and books, free and unmolested. Or if I was feeling especially vindicative, I could trace the sorrowful sigil with my toe and open a hole for the infinitely hungry things that dwell in the down below lands to crawl up through. I have to admit, it'd be fun to see the looks on these yokels' faces if I did that. But what then? My eyes are getting too dim to read my books of magic or see secret knowledge in the guts of a dove. My knobby hands are too twisted and clumsy for me to craft any more sculptures of time or to brew up marvels in my cauldron. And worst of all, my beautiful mind, my most prized possession of all, has begun to slip away from me in fits and starts. It used to be sharper than the wings of those razor blade angels, but every day it gets a little duller. Every day I'm a little more forgetful. From here on out, this road doesn't go anyplace good. I've lived a wonderful life. It's been the best existence I could have wanted. I've learned so much, experienced so much, loved so much. I've seen the whole world, and oh, what a world it is. I've seen the worlds beyond this one too, and sang along with the music of the spheres. But now, like a drop of water falling back into the sea, it's time for my separate existence to end, and for me to rejoin something so much bigger than myself. Before I was me, I was earth and air and fire and water. I was animal and plants and bugs and rocks and salt and the very stars that shine in the sky. It's time for me to be these things again. So if a tear or two rolls down my craggy old cheeks as the flames rise up above me, please know that it's not from fear or pain or sorrow. They're tears of joy. Today I lose myself, but I gain everything else. Burn the Witch. Thanks very much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. I love that character. She really put the wit in witch. And it was surprisingly, for the subject matter, sometimes heartening.
I feel like it's about as life-affirming as a story of this sort can be.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And I'm glad that you said it first, so I didn't have to say thanks for the cheerful and heartening story of revenge against our enemies.
It's kind of the American dream, isn't it? Revenge against all those who have wronged.
Indeed. All right, just a second to let that one soak in and get ready for our next story. Our next reader tonight is Randee Dawn. Randee Dawn is a Brooklyn-based author who writes about the glam world of entertainment by day and the seamy underbelly of the real world by night. Her short stories have been published in anthologies and publications, including Children of a Different Sky, Where We May Wag, and the forthcoming Dim Shores Volume 2 and Horror for the Throne. She is co-editor of Across the Universe, Tales of Alternative Beetles. Boy, have I heard a lot of writers being excited about that one. And co-wrote the Law and Order SVU Unofficial Companion. Her articles appear regularly in Variety, the Los Angeles Times, Today.com, and Emmy Magazine. Her work, From the Glam to the Gory, can be found at randeedawn.com. Randee, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for that great introduction. It is wonderful to be here. It is wonderful to be reading on what for me is a later schedule. I'm so used to East Coast readings that it is nice to reach the West Coast. And thanks for including me. So I'll just get started. A little heads up on this story, although based on that one, I'm sure that we've cleared the kids out of the room. I've got some cussing in this story. So if you have kids or delicate sensibilities, now is the time to decide if that matters. The story is called Home for the Holidays, and you can get it in either one of these collections next to me. One is a book of my short stories and one is more horror stories, and those can be found at my website, which is boldly stated up at the top there. So this is Home for the Holidays. Giles Sanderson was a very bad man, but Jesus, he was a hell of a decorator. But maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Nathan Jacobs is the name, and this is my territory. Some call it a neighborhood, but when the houses are this damn huge and each comes with 3/4 an acre of property, I start thinking of it as territory. I'm not alone. Folks around here mark their space better than dogs. Why, just take a turn onto our main drag off I-35 and you'll see them, 10-foot-high wood slat fences with no space between even for a casual peep. Because Christ knows you shouldn't be eyeballing who's got Oprah on the tube, or who's throwing the ball with his kid, or even who's burying something under the old oak tree in the far back corner. Or in the case of Giles Sanderson, when you hauled off and backhanded your half-Mexican wife across the chops for not scurrying fast enough to get the mud clots off the Italian tiled floors. Mud that you, Giles, had clomped in the first place. You wouldn't want nobody to be seeing that. Yes, the backs of our territories are duly cut off from the rest of the world by the butt ugliest of fences. But the front of those houses, well, that's a different story. We're Delians, you see. That's the computer giant that employs us and sets us up in these fine McMansions, one cardboard cutout like the others, with just enough shades of difference in the rock facade or the hidden 2-car garage or the overhanging porch to make it seem as though they were all thought up by original brains. But the truth is they all look the same, and when you're driving past, they're just a blur of beige and gray, like the dusty ground that used to surround Austin before the builders came and resettled the place. Dell employees don't stay too long. They come, they unpack, they get settled, wave a little at the locals, and then they're off again, relocated like army brats, only ruled by the whims of the computer industry. Houses in this area get to be 2-3 years old, and they've gone through just about as many families. There are no long-timers, except us, the Jacobses, or Jacob '(S) if you're partial to misprinted nameplates like the one Jill bought me when we moved in. I've been here with her and the little ones, that's David and Astrid, going on 5 years now. I'm a Delian like the others, but I've got a snug little executive spot with a window overlooking I-35, but still overlooking. I know about half the folks who load in and load out of our little cul-de-sac. That's Tempest Cove to you. We wave and send over Jill's cranberry muffins when they arrive, and sometimes they wave back until they're waving goodbye a few months later. It happens. Giles Sanderson was never a Delian. He worked for one of those big box stores somewhere up in management with some kind of title that includes the word vice, and that's all I know about that. And it turned out his wife is allergic to cranberry. I still remember when they moved in about 4 years ago, right directly southwest to our homestead. Jill did her muffin thing, coming back to tell me that evening how the wife never did get her name. Stuck her head out of that front door like a mouse from its hidey hole, took the basket and darted right back in. It was dark in there, Jill told me later, and they had the AC on full blast, so I felt like I was peeking into a goddamn cave. She also said the wife had on sunglasses. I put it out of my mind until our doorbell went that night. A big ho, 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 because I'd bought that ringer with 17 different rings. And since it was past December 1st, we were gearing up for the big holiday season. But on the other side of my front door was like a big no, no, no. Without preliminary or nothing, Giles Sanderson, face all aflame like he was going to stroke out, pushed my wife's basket into my arms. A chewed-on muffin rolled onto the floor. Sharky, our golden retriever, shot forward and had it before Dust could even think about gathering. That retriever is a garbage disposal, and no mistake. Just what the fuck do you think you're doing with my wife? Sanderson steamed at me. Behind me, I knew Jill was sticking her head out of the kitchen. Such a loaded statement had to be seen to be believed. More importantly, what are you doing with my wife's basket? I tried to get things light. Folks in Texas, even near the civilized oasis of Austin, do love their firearms. Weirdly, it worked. The red went to pink and then to sort of a mottled orange gray. Sanderson wasn't a very big man with a flat top crew cut an aircraft could have landed on, and his clothes were just a cat's whisker from being too tight. I got the picture. Former jock, holding off middle age with both hands, probably pumped iron 3 hours a day. Finally, when he realized I was kidding, he stuck out a meaty paw. Manicured fingernails glinted under our outside porch light. Sorry, overreacted. Just the wife's. She can't have berries, none. Blows her up like a balloon. No problem, I said and took his hand. He squeezed so hard I could feel the bones folding in. I'm not a small man myself, even if I never was a football player, but I know overcompensation when I see it or feel it. This wasn't a handshake. This was a test. So I didn't wince, I just gave it back. And the handshake went on a few breaths longer than it should. A tap came on my shoulder and I let go. Jill came around and gave me a look warning about testosterone contests. Howdy, she said. Jill Jacobs. So sorry I caused a fuss. That Jill, she's a lady with the outside folks. Butter wouldn't melt and all. With me, though, she's a real person and swears like a sailor. Just one reason I love her. He turned red again, but this was a blush. Oh, sorry, ma'am. Giles Sanderson. He pronounced it with a soft G, and it rhymed with piles. I just bet he was the kind of guy who'd blast off if you pronounced it wrong. Nathan, I nodded his way. Well, we just got in, and it's a little funny to have a welcome wagon, he admitted, running his paw around the back of his neck. Just never know who could come by and start offering food. I got a little concerned. Jill passed me a look. We knew folks who got concerned like that. It never ended well. And in the neighborhood where I grew up in North Austin, it could end up in blood, sweat, and tears, let's say. Suddenly, the wife's sunglasses inside made sense. Disarmed, Sanderson stood there and babbled a little longer, told us what they were doing here and how they didn't have kids but were hoping, and the phone rang. We both begged off. When I shut the door finally, I think everybody was relieved. At least he won't be here long, I told Jill. How do you make that? She asked. Because nobody stays here long. Except us, she winked. Muffin? So that's how it started. We met the Sandersons one at a time, and that was it. And they never waved back, so we didn't strike up a friendship. And eventually, I didn't have time, at least not that October, because I was getting geared for one of my favorite things of all, dressing up the house. Yeah, it might seem a little candy-assed, but when you got kids, you get into the whole cornball of everything. You sing with the Lion King and you act like Dora's a fucking genius. And in a way, you kind of believe it all because they do. So starting when the kids were about 2 and 3, I got into the holidays all over again. Halloween kicked off the season for me. Spook Day meant I could wire the house for sound and movement and make lights flash and witches fly, send up plumes of dry ice smoke and put the doorbell on and make it go woo. Every year there was more shit at the store to test out. The skeleton I put in the front hallway, which lurched out at you when the door opened, scared off so many trick-or-treaters I had to retire it. But turning the garage into a haunted house brought them back. I reigned unquestioned supreme as Halloween House on Tempest Cove. Partly that was because of all the Jesus freaks around here. They got Halloween seen as anti-Christian. These evangelical nuts get all worked up over the fact that their favorite holidays might actually have, saints preserve us, where are my smelling salts, pagan histories. So the competition I might have isn't participating. Oh, sure, their kids go candy grubbing. Some of them even have little ones show up with pamphlets, but they don't dress up and they don't decorate the house, and they give you the hairy eyeball in the H&B when you start checking out the bowl with a mechanical hand that grabs back. So it didn't surprise me at all that Giles Sanderson was dark that first Halloween. I thought about egging it, but between the haunted house and taking Dave and Asti around the territory, I didn't have time. And then we all crashed out after too many Reese's peanut butter cups, so I shrugged my shoulders and let it go. Then came Christmas. Christmas now, that's a different animal. The neighborhood goes certifiable. I shit you not. Every year we go for a post-meal Thanksgiving constitutional. I need a walk before all that pie. And catch parents with their kids climbing trees and scaling ladders, already putting up the gaudy red and green lights, or staking out those blow-up Santas and snowmen to flap in the breeze for the next whole month. Every house, and I do mean every house, except for the ones not occupied, has some kind of decoration up, from Santa and his sleigh on the roof to multiple trees in the window. Just who needs more than one tree? Still, I was guilty too. I didn't start out to make it a competition, but my taste for fame got whetted with the Halloween success, and it felt like the area was looking to me to take the lead in decking the halls and bowing the holly. So was I to let them down. I wouldn't go gaudy. I did all white lights and maxed out with 3 things in the yard. We only had 1 tree, but it was tasteful, pleasant and clean and easy on the eye. Cars would slow drive on Tempest Cove and pause before our home. They took pictures, and then they'd ease on out, going a little bit faster past all the rest. We had it down. We were kings of the cove. Not bad for an atheist and his lapsed Catholic wife. Then came Giles. He upped the ante. That first Christmas he came, he waited until we had our whole display out. I knew he was eyeballing us. You could see him staring from his 2nd floor media room window, cradling a cup of coffee in one hand, sipping it in slippered comfort while I banged hell out of my fingers trying to get all the pieces in place. The day after I finished, Jill went out to snag the morning paper. She took so long coming back in, I went to see what was what. Sharpie trotted along outside. That dog follows me everywhere. Bad news? I asked, nodding at the still folded paper under her arm. She slid her eyes over at the Sandersons. Son of a bitch, I muttered. Sanderson had mirrored our hard-designed, long-admired house beautiful on his side of the cul-de-sac, down to the flickering candles in the windows. His house was a different model than ours, but there was no mistake. All white, icicles from the eaves, candles in the window, and lighted deer frames on the lawn. But then I saw it. The deer heads were bobbing up and down, grazing. They were ghostly, ethereal, heartbreaking. My lawn looked like shit next to that. One small difference and it changed everything. Just then, Sanderson came out to get his paper. I started forward. Jill grabbed my robe, but I yanked free. My slippers slapped against the tarmac as I pounded in his direction. You like? He winked at me. Has the ring of the familiar, I barked back. Behind Sanderson, a mouse stuck her head out of the door, watching. Maddeningly, he shrugged. It's the most wonderful time of the year, he said. You stole my design, I shouted, knowing the whole neighborhood could hear, knowing I sounded like a 4-year-old. I didn't give a rat's. He grinned. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Quit flattering me. And just like that, the grin still on his face, he gave me the finger. I took 1 step, and this time it wasn't Jill tapping on my shoulder. It was Asti and David, each grabbing an arm. Daddy, they cried together. Daddy, come see. I glanced down, wanting to shrug them off. I was livid, infuriated on some deep, instinctual level by this creep. But when I looked back up, he was already inside, so I dropped it. The second year, I vowed to be bigger, and I was. We added on. Jill looked at me askew, but didn't say anything. And when Sanderson still did us one better, he had music synced to his lights for good mother's sake. The cars slowed down to look at his place. Third year, he got so complex, he was hiring illegals to come out and help him get the decorations up. That year, the local paper did a story on his designs, and then the local news picked it up and got it put on the internet, and it landed about 100,000 hits or something ridiculous. We were left in the dust. Only we shouldn't have been. We still had a kick-ass set of decorations. But every time I brought in a new innovation, words on the roof, light panels on the driveway, Sanderson had one more trick up his tooth-tight sleeve. And it was always the one thing that made his place perfect and my place like an amateur's. Taste went out the window that third year, and Jill even complained. I can't find our front door anymore with all this shit, she told me. I'm blind just carrying in the groceries. Use the garage, I snapped. And when she tried to take 1 or 2 items down when I wasn't home, it was my turn to blow my top. We retired into our bathroom and had it out. She made perfect sense, and I was completely unreasonable in return. But it was the only thing I became immobile with her on. Do not fuck with my decorations, I told her. It's the principle of the matter. And she threw up her hands and said she was learning to hate this holiday. Strangely, so was I. Meanwhile, Sanderson took in the accolades and the applause, always him doing the talking, his wife standing in the back behind, blinking with wide, dark eyes. Then the news trucks would disappear, and his house continued to blare out at the rest of the street with its permanent snowfall and eternal pine scent. If you stood outside to admire it in the late hours, you might even catch some sound coming from the house, and noises that had nothing to do with December celebrations. No, the screaming and the shifting and the breaking reminded me much more of Halloween, than Christmas. This year, Jill said she'd had enough. They were going to spend Christmas with her parents in Colorado, and I could come, or I could sit at home and stare at the Sandersons like Pink does to the TV and the wall. She didn't give a shit. Of course, she did give a shit, but that's how she puts on a brave face. You see, this year, what broke her was the contest. I don't know for positive, but I'm pretty goddamn sure that Sanderson was behind the institution of the holiday decoration contest with the local news station. You know, the one that got him on the internet a few years back. It was co-sponsored by our local rag, which had printed that his decorations were elegantly reflective of the joy that holiday brings, or some other highfalutin crap. Basically, everyone in this zip code could enter. All you had to do was decorate and send in a 3-minute video about your place, and the finalists got a visit from the station's judging committee. The winner, a blue ribbon and a picture in the paper and $100. So obviously, it wasn't about the ribbon or the paper or the $100. It's the fucking principle of the matter. The last 4 years, this joker had stolen every good idea I got and colored outside the lines and got outside help and took it to the media, which made everybody start upping their game until the whole neighborhood turned into like one of those side streets at Disneyland. It was the least happiest place on earth, though. I kissed Jill and the kidlets goodbye at Austin Bergstrom and told them I'd be along directly, but I had to stick at work for some last-minute development meetings. Jill gave me another hairy eyeball, like she didn't think I was really going to show. I kissed her again and promised to make it. When was the last time I let you down? I asked her. And she had to look away. She knows I don't go back on my word. The plane took off and I left the car at the airport, taking a cab that cost me more than the prize money would have, sneaking into the back door of my place just as full dark came on. I don't think anyone saw me. I'd left our decorations on a timer, but we were out of town. Nobody home. I took a quick look at Sanderson's handiwork, which glowed even more bright now that it didn't have to compete with mine. I caught the live action Santa in the front yard, grinning away, waving his hand, leaning back in his big old ugly sleigh, and I gave him the finger. It wasn't but a quick walk across the street to Sanderson's, but I had to be circumspect. I went out the back again, all dressed in black, with my hunting knife hid good and tight in its sheath against my leg. I got low to the ground and hugged that blockade wood fence that keeps all of us safe and tight from prying eyes, swooping around the back of the Browns, the Changs, and the Cohens, until there I was in the one space Sanderson didn't want to be observed, his own backyard. I hunkered next to his deck behind the grill and waited. It was quiet, and that was odd because except on Halloween night, I knew the Sandersons never went out, never had people in, never went on vacation. Sanderson came home from work every night at 7:30 and was gone again by 6 in the morning. When he was home, mostly all you heard was the TV blaring, except for the nights when you couldn't sleep and you got a breath of fresh air outside and could hear the whimpering or the moaning in the late night, so late it was really morning. But now I heard nothing. Something wet came out of the branches and fastened on my hand, and I jumped a mile. Jesus Christ, dog, I growled at him. Sharky, who followed me everywhere, thought we were playing a game. Go home. He didn't move. Ah, fuck, animal, I said, and I gave him the one command he did obey. Lie down. Immediately, his blonde bulk dropped flat and his nose went between his paws. He would stay like that until the earth opened up under him or until I gave the signal. Good dog. I glanced off to my right. There it was, the one thing I was looking for. Same spot as on my McMansion. I prized open the fuse box with a lockpick, preparing to mess up the innards with my knife. Nobody was going to give out a prize to a house that couldn't even get itself lit. If the judges decided the next day they liked my decorations best, they just had to deal with me in the new year. My plan was to camp out in my own backyard, take Sharky over to the kennel, then grab a crack of dawn flight in the morning to avoid suspicion and all. I had just pulled out the knife when I heard the thud. It was a dull, crashing thing, but it all came as one big noise, as if someone had dropped a sack of laundry from a height. I froze and glanced at Sharky, who had an eyebrow cocked but had not moved. Inching over to the deck, I crouched down low just as the backyard light popped on and the glass backyard door slid open. A figure emerged, pulling something behind it. A mouse, lacing her fingers under the armpits of a former jock, taking minute backward steps on the deck. Her breaths came hard and fast, audible even above the shushing of his clothes against the wooden deck slats. She stopped and righted herself, and then I heard soft sobs. "Hey," I said, standing tall, the knife resheathed. "You okay?" The mouse whipped around, eyes wide and staring. One seemed sunken in, almost blending with her boy-cropped brown hair. It was a shiner like none I'd ever seen, and it got my blood boiling. The light cut across her mouth, and I saw a crust of blood on one of the corners, a rough texture against the swelling there. "It's okay," I said, staring down at Giles Sanderson. Let's just say he looked much, much worse than the mouse, thanks to having his skull stove in. From the size of it, I'd say she clocked him with a vase or maybe a pot, maybe even a claw hammer. Didn't matter. He wasn't breathing. Is it wrong to say I felt a small thrill run up my backside? I caught my flight with plenty of time to spare the next morning. For once, Delta was on time, and I knew I'd be with Jill and the kids in time to see them opening the gifts. But I was also glad I'd have a few more hours to rest. Every muscle in me was aching by the time I got on board. You see, I didn't have much time to sleep that evening. The mouse and I never did get her name, had to expend a lot of energy making sure Giles wouldn't be found, at least not right away. At first, she wanted to bury him under the tree and pretend he vanished, but I told her that was going to look suspicious in about 5 minutes. And then they'd bring out the dogs and sniff him, and it wouldn't work. What she needed to do was just be out of town for the holidays, leave the house look broken into. I'd take care of the rest. So at 2 a.m, she was packing, and at 3, she was heading to the train station, and at 4, I was doing a little more decoration on Giles Sanderson's house. It still looks like mine, of course. Yes, there's always that one extra bit that completely fucks with my design and elevates his. But this year, I'm the one who made the adjustment. It's a very personal edition, a lifelike, human-sized Santa figure in full costume, propped up in a sleigh in the front lawn. The reins are in his paw-like mittened hands, and the mask over his face makes him eternally jolly and delightful. It can't do much about the lack of a twinkle in his eye, though. Too bad it isn't Vermont, but Texas has been cold these last few seasons, so I don't think anyone will say anything about Santa's body odor until at least Dick Clark is counting on the ball falling, by which time the mouse will have returned and noted her husband is missing, and the search will commence. Nobody will ever think her capable of causing him harm, and nobody will certainly think she could have moved him that far, and by then all of her injuries should be well healed. I know it may seem counterproductive to add to Sanderson's landscape. The Santa figure lends a touch of fantastical reality that no other house, including mine, can approach. There's no doubt that Giles Sanderson will win the contest this year. But he hasn't got a chance in hell next Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, what a pair of wicked stories we've had tonight.
Absolutely. Great fun, though.
Yes.
Glad you liked.
Yes. Giles is one of those guys who just only has so much to give.
Yep. But he gave his all,
He really did.
right until the very end.
Daniel and I are always surprised at how we can bring in 2 authors who don't even know each other, and we don't match the stories, and yet.
And yet. Exactly.
It's a wonderful
Every week, it's uncanny.
It's really great.
Well, who doesn't love a good revenge story?
And next week, we have another great pair of writers. We have Rebecca Gomez Farrell and Edward Austin Hall. And you can keep up to date about more upcoming authors at storyhour2020.com. You can also see programs you may have missed or just watch this one another few times at the Story Hour page on Facebook. So Randee, Max, thank you both so much for your wickedly entertaining stories.
Thank you.
Entertainingly wicked stories? Both, I think.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to all of you who attended.
Yes, thanks for everybody who attended, absolutely, and who watched this later, and thank you for having us on.
Well, it's what Daniel always calls spinning the fictive dream together. And I like that very much, that we're all sharing that. So thank you all, and good night.
Right.
Night, everybody.